It is a privilege and joy that we can continue our study about the family, and today we have seasons of parenting. Before we start, we remember that God initially had a great plan initiating or creating the family. It was that she should work by love, God would be the source, and this union should grow and multiply and never have an end. But through the wrong decision of Adam and Eve, things have changed. Now marriage becomes a difficult place to be because it's not about love, it's now about selfishness. My needs, which were given to be a means in order to give, now became a center of my life. And so it's all about me. Selfishness and pride are the motivation, and the source cannot be anyone else except Lucifer and humans, from which people draw their power, but there is none there that they need. And then, of course, marriage starts with the union of the two, but it's very often, even more and more often, it is not ended by death, but by divorce, by fights, by violence, and by adultery. Why is this so? Because a need, my need now becomes a purpose, and the union between the two is not to live together, but now they live from each other. And this is the picture when a person or a couple is separated from God. The husband takes from his wife, and the wife takes from her husband. The children takes from their parents, which is at the beginning normal. But what is not normal is that the parents take from their children, and everyone takes from the other, and everyone lives in the deception that he gives and expects to receive. Under such circumstances, a family and parenting is not a favorite thing. It's not something that can function well, because everyone searches his own good. When children appear in the family, then mother and father starts a fight, because each one thinks the child is theirs. And so each one wants the best for the child, and they see the other want something, but they don't consider that that's also the best that they see. And so a battle starts. How to educate the child, how to feed it, how to behave towards him. And then obviously the child is born in that deception, and so it also starts a battle with the parents to make them to behave well. So everyone fights with everyone in the family, and it is a disaster. The results are seen today in society. Families are not a peaceful place to be. And when there is a place that they have more better relationship, then it's because they make compromises and arrange somehow themselves. But whenever a difficulty arises, whenever things don't go the right way, then the battle is on the daily schedule. How shall we solve the problem? So let's look to parents before they have children. What is the desire for children? Is it a basic need or an ancillary additional need? Because under the wrong identity, things that are additional becomes priority. So that's why the desire for a child put by God in the heart of the humans, especially in the female, becomes, when it is not fulfilled, a tragedy or a reason for disease. So let's look to make a separation between the basic or primary needs and those who are additional needs. So the basic needs we know is love. Everything works by love. Then we have oxygen, water, food, warmth, the 37 degrees Celsius or 98.6 Fahrenheit. We need sunlight, sleep. Those are the basic needs. No one can renounce them and live. But what are the additional needs? Marriage is an additional need. Adam lived before he got Eve. So his life was enriched through marriage. And God intended for the purpose to multiply. But for all others, or under our circumstances, marriage is an additional need. Children, yes, they have to be for multiplication, but it cannot be in any case. So people can live without being married and without having children and still be fulfilled. Wealth. We were made for wealth. When Adam and Eve were created and put into the garden, luxury was their place. I mean, we cannot imagine one day we will see that place where God put them, and we will say, how could they ever be unhappy in such a place, full of natural luxury, not of artificial that we have today. Then it is an additional need to have a life-friendly weather conditions. You see, I like always to be sunshine. I like it to be always warm. But of course, we don't have that anymore. So we have to put some warm clothes on it when it is cold and see what we do when it is too warm. We would need an environment that is harmonious, an environment that is danger-free. That's how the Garden of Eden was. There was no danger that anything could happen to them. The only was their own decision to take from that fruit or not. We would need to see, hearing, smelling, tasting. These are our senses, but even this are not needed for our existence or our happiness. There are people who be born blind or become blind, and they still can have a fulfilled life. There are people who cannot hear or speak, and still they can have a fulfilled life. And there are people who are born disabled to walk or get to an accident to that. Are they then not being able to have a fulfilled life? Yes, they can. So without this additional needs, we can be fulfilled, because love would give us the happiness needed in every circumstances to exist. Now, when God created humanity, He never intended that there should be not a satisfaction of all the needs that He put into the human being. The primary and the secondary would have been together always, and it would have not been a problem. We would not even see them as different. But today, under the circumstances of the changing of identity, we must see the difference. That now the wrong identity turns secondary needs into basic needs. So marriage becomes, for many people, the center of their life. And if that is not fulfilling or fulfilled, then they lose their purpose in life. So a means that God once gave is now purpose. Children, how sweet they are and how much pleasantness they bring into a family. When they are missing or misbehaving, they become a tragedy for that couple. I remember that my wife wanted children by all means. I didn't want children since our marriage was not good at that time, and I said I don't want to have children in a not functioning well marriage. But after she insisted, I was willing, but then still God didn't give us children. Now, yes, there are certain conditions to be fulfilled to have children. Not only intimacy, but we must know how the body functions so that we know if we can have fertility or not. So we didn't know those things back then. So God didn't give us children, and maybe we didn't fulfill the condition, what I suppose, but He gave us 6 foster children. And so I thought the need for a child would be fulfilled. And yes, for me, I have no desire to have my own, because whenever people come and say they have their own children, I say it's just a deception. No one has his own children, because looking to reality, that's the truth. So when children are missing, there is a big issue. Most females that have breast cancer have it on the left breast, and since most are right-handed, it is also seen that they have no children, because they cannot go over the loss of not having a child, or a child has passed away, or there was an abortion, or whatever happened there. So we see when an additional need is not fulfilled, we think we must enforce that, and that brings terrible results. Now, God made us to be prosper, to be wealthy, and prosperity is a need, but it is an additional need, not a purpose in life. But now this becomes the purpose, and it looks like for prosperity, people are willing even to give up their relationships and their children and just run for that thing. But the results are terrible. So the desire for marriage, children, prosperity leads to harm, disease, and ruin if they are not fulfilled. If they are not fulfilled, then people get sick, they get wild, and they do things which are not correct. Why is that so? Why cannot people be more wise and look to things from the right perspective? It is because of the wrong identity. Let us look to the principles of identity. We have seen in our last lecture that identity is the wellspring where all our thoughts start. It's the reception of the information that comes from outside. And we can we can take in that information only through I am God or I am a creature. There are only these two pathways of thoughts. So either all thoughts arise, or either the thought arises for I am God, or the thought arises for I am a creature. So let's look to the main principles. So if there is a God, then of course he thinks he's spiritually independent because God is independent. If it is a creature, it is conscious that we are spiritually dependent. Now, the physical dependency is not an issue because as long as we have all the means around, we don't even see that we're dependent when we drink water or eat or sleep. We do that because in all things it pleases us. But spiritually, we think, oh, I think independently. I think what I want. And that is not possible, as I have tried to explain that again and again. So, when I am a God, how many things belong unto me? How many things belong to God? And when I ask this question to my patients, they say, everything belongs to God. And then I say, okay, then everything belongs to me. And we see this from the beginning. Every person, every child is possessive. They think things belong to them. You ask a child, is this your toy? It says yes. Is it is the father your father? It says yes. So everything, it belongs to me. And our language is so made that it is hard even to say it different. But if you are a creature, how much does belong to you? How much does belong to a creature? And every one of my patients says, nothing belongs to a creature. So if I'm a creature, then nothing is mine. Neither my life, neither my body, nothing I can say is my property. See the great difference. And then the question is, how many things does God do out of himself? And the answer is, all things God does from himself. And if I'm a God, then all things I give from me. But how many things does a creature out of himself? Nothing does a creature out of himself. So I do nothing from me. So whatever I give, I had to take first. No matter if I'm conscious of that or not, but I can never give anything from me. It's like the water hose cannot give water from himself. Nothing can give anything from himself except the Creator. And then the fourth question is, if God is the power, how many things are governed through his power and how many are rounding about himself? And then the answer is everything is surrounding him. So God made that all should function in circles. So he's the center, and from him everything comes out and everything goes back. And everything turns around God. And if we are thinking we're gods, everyone needs to circle around ourselves. It's all about me. And if you look to the person, it's all about me. It was just, recently I spoke to a mother whose child was running over the street and hit by a car. Fortunately, the child was not injured so much, but the car hit him, so he fell a few feet away from the car. So the lady who came out of the car was scared, and she said, "Oh, I'm going to jail now. I'm going to jail because I killed a child." So to whom was she thinking on? Did she think on the poor child or on herself? You see, in every situation, especially in stress situation, you see that the person always thinks about itself. We think the world needs to circle around me. The child comes to this earth, not to the earth, the child is born on earth, and It expects that the parents should turn around itself. It doesn't see that it must turn around the parents. If I'm a created being, then it's all about the Creator. Then I am in His service, not in my own. So you see the 4 basic principles of the right and the wrong identity. And now let it apply it to the family and to parenting. First, to the desire for children, the desire for a spouse. I have no spouse, no children, no prosperity. Who has the loss? Who is the one that is in need? Is it me or not me? You see, when I am a God and I have no spouse and no children and no prosperity, then it's my loss. I have the loss. And it is a personal loss. Because for whose sake do I marry? For whose sake do I want to have children? For whose sake do I want to have prosperity? It's for me. It's for me. And so I am the victim because I don't have these things. But if I would be a creature and I would understand it, I would say, well, God, I work for you alone, but if I have no spouse, then of course I cannot work more. But it's not about me, it's about you. If I have no children, then I cannot multiply your inheritance, and I do what I can. I have responsibility. I have to check out the conditions that I should fulfill them. But if it doesn't happen, then I can be content with that situation. You see, when we remember Rachel and Leah, the 2 wives of Jacob, how they fighted each other and how Rachel wanted by all means children. Yes, it is a need, but it's not a basic need. And God fulfills it. And we have the example of Hannah, who prayed, but she wanted to give that child to God. And so God answered that prayer. So it's important that we understand, if I have a child or no, it's not my gain. I have only the pleasure to do it, and that is also a gain. If I have no prosperity, I do not lose nothing because I have less to put into the way to give. But we want to have the prosperity for us, not to serve better. So I have no loss, no personal loss when I don't have them. And I am no victim of that. It's so important to understand that it is either you're a victim or not a victim. Every problem comes from there. Now, looking to a parent who has a child, but it must be a single parent. Usually, single parents have a strong understanding that they are a victim. I just had this days in my practice, a lady, and she said, I'm single parent since 13 years, and she was in her 40s. So she was not happy with the situation. Now, yes, it is not a necessary fulfilling of the additional need that we have when we are a single parent, but I can look to it from 2 different ways. Either I see it as a favor or a disfavor. I see it as a great challenge to make it even better alone than together, or I can see it as a disaster. Now, single parents can have great fulfillment if they would look from the side of a creature. Serving God, raising God's child. Yes, why not do it alone? Is there not enough resources from God? Yes, there is. So why then complaining? You see, the problem is because the identity says it's only half your child and half is it his. And now you raise the half part of the child of the other one. It's a terrible way to think. But that's what happens in the subconscious. When single parents are unhappy, they are unhappy because they subconsciously believe they raise the child of their husband or of their wife. They don't do the right things. Instead of saying, oh, I'm raising God's children, alone or not alone, it's fine. And then I find women who complain very often the husband doesn't help in the house. And so I say, why would you not see that as a favor? Why would they not see that as something in which you can excel? Why would you think you're a victim because he does not help you? Do what you can, because you don't work for him. You don't work for his children. You work for God's children. And God gives you enough power to do all those things without any problems. But you see, this self-deceptive idea, we're a God and we're not. So being not a God and thinking you are, you must be all the time a victim because everyone does not circle right around you. And so you must say, hey, he doesn't make that for me and he doesn't do that. And I'm a poor person. I have to deal with all these things. Almost every person that opened its mouth complains. And the moment you complain, you're a victim. There is never coming out of the mouth of Jesus a complaint about himself. How poor he is and how much he has to do and how difficult the way is. Nothing of that. Yes, the way was difficult, but it was all manageable through the power that he took from his Father in order to give. What do parents when their children don't go the right way? Now, most of the parents don't realize that it's the early childhood that is determining the child's future. If the parents would know that, then they would know how to parent them in those early years. But usually, those early years are somehow missed, and there are fightings and all this. And then, of course, when the child in his teenage age or a little bit older gets into a society and he gets on drugs or on friends or whatever he gets, then parents look and they don't know what to do. And then, of course, they go and pray and pray and fast, but would it not be better they should first repent before they do that? Because they must show the most of the parents that they consider their children as their own. And they want by all means that they should be saved. Is that the right way to do it? Now, the want that it should be saved is correct. But what is behind it? For whose sake do I want them to be saved? So, when children are disobedient or don't go the right way, parents get sick. They get sick because they don't know how to handle the thing. Because no one taught them at their situation, at their time, what's going on in their hearts. But if the parents would understand what's about it, then things would change, no matter at what age the child is. So let us look closer to parenting, to raising children, to give them the right path. So I read a Bible verse here that I've found very clear, very truthful. That is from Proverbs 22, verse 15. It says, "Foolishness is bound in the heart of a child, but the rod of correction shall drive it far from him." Now Solomon, the wisest man on earth, he had a great insight of the human being. A child is born with foolishness. What is the foolishness that is bound in the heart of a child? It's the idea, I am God. And now the rod of correction must take the child away from foolishness and bring it to wisdom, to reality. So the education, parenting, is making the child escape from the bondage it was born into, escape from the foolishness in his heart. So every child is under Satan's dominion, born here on earth, because it believes the Satan's lie about itself. Yes, it's inherited. The child has no choice. But now that the parents know the problem, they know why they would use correction. Now, some people here understand the rod of correction as beating up the foolishness out of a child. That's a terrible thing. That's a terrible misunderstanding. Can ever foolishness be beaten out? I mean, can it ever be expelled through force? Of course not. And the rod of correction is not a rod. It's not something physical. It's not something by which you beat someone, because it's not that which is meant when Solomon uses the rod. It's a method of showing the child the foolishness of its heart and getting it out of there. So first purpose in education is understanding the child is born blind, understanding the child is born disabled spiritually, understanding it cannot obey until it removes the foolishness from his heart. Now, is it not foolishness when someone comes and says, I'm God? Yes, that's the foolishness. That's why he's very clear here. It says foolishness. And everyone who considers himself higher than he is a fool, is a person that lost his mind, has irrational. Foolishness is irrationality. So that's what Solomon knew. Now, let's put three principles of education down. The first is, for whom do I raise the children? If I am a God, I do it for me. Must do it for me. Yes, because whose child is it? My child. So when we got our 6 foster children about 21 years ago, yes, it was overnight. The family separated. They had 6 children. The youngest was 7, the oldest was 17, 4 boys and 2 girls. How did I consider them? When I once decided to take them, which was I am convinced by the inspiration of God, because He wanted me to go into that lecture, because it was, in the end, the turning point in my life, after a few years having the children. And God reconverted me. But I considered they're mine. And of course, I entered into a competition with the parents. Now, the father was more, didn't care so much, but the mother was there, and I was really having an inner jealousy. I considered them mine. I took them, now they're mine. I didn't know that they are God's property. They were His. And of course, today I know He was the one that gave them to me. Now there come parents to me and say, well, you don't have your children of your own. And I say, no, no one has children of his own. Even though they come through them, they are not from them. That's through the deception of our heart. We think children come from us, not through us. So they become our property. The second question is, for which purpose do I raise the children, or do I educate them? Now, when I got the 6 children, I had to go to work about 60 kilometers. I was driving a half an hour, 40 minutes, sometimes more, on my way to the place of work where I worked in the hospital. I was thinking, what shall I do out of these children? And of course, I wanted to make them big people. I said, the one has to be a doctor, the other has to be a judge or a high educated person, like I thought today, and the one is a pastor. And so lawyer, pastors, doctors, those are the people I thought well educated. And of course, I was making plans. But for which purpose? It was for me, for my success, my achievement. I would say, well, I do something out of you. I didn't know that I was wrong. To fulfill the God-given purpose, that is the real thing when we raise children. We want to educate them that they are made to serve. I made a great mistake when we got the children, that I took a housemaid. And this housemaid was there 24 hours, 7 days, and she helped in everything. And when I asked one day, one of my sons there, he was 13 years old, I said, help with removing the dishes from the table after we have eaten. And he said, well, she's paid for it. With other words, if you pay me, I do it. I was so blind to see that if you have 6 children, you don't need a housemaid, because they were made to work, they were made to do service. But no, I said, oh no, they have to go to school, they have to do this, and let's just have someone who serves the children of the king. It was a terrible mistake. And it's not getting back. Even today when we come together, it's a hard time to see that they have a hard time even taking the dishes away from the table. This is when we educate the child to be king, to be served, that things should go around them. While we must understand they must be the one that serve. And then who shall they represent? Whom shall they represent? And of course, parents want to be represented by their children. They want to see that people should know what they have realized in educating these children. Now, this is why parents are in a disaster when the children don't get where they should go, and then they think they failed, and then they take it all over and get guilt thoughts and all this, which destroys their health and takes away their happiness, because it's a deception. It's all about them. But if I am a creature of God, I raise the children to represent God's character of love. But for this, the parent must first be changed in his heart. For this, the parent must have seen its own wrong identity and has to put it on the cross to destroy it. How can a parent help a child become free from the foolishness is it born with if the parent is still in the same foolishness? It's not possible. So parents must understand the right identity. They must understand they are children of God. They must know the truth about themselves. But if parents don't know it, oh, what a terrible thing it is. Because they don't teach their children with the rod of correction to drive it away, but through correction of the parents, the children's foolishness grows. You see, when we receive the truth from the Bible and we judge it through the false identity, we become dictators. We become people that are worse than before, because now we have to bring everyone to the same truth we believe is the truth. We change the truth in a dominating issue. We dominate others, we dictate others. And so secular people run away from Christians because they know these people are crazy of pushing us to make the right by force. And they are not happy people because they take the truth and they take the rod of correction, but the child gets after this rod of correction more foolish than it was born. Its nature of a God was developed, was more fixed in that mind instead of being drawn away from it, like it says here, shall drive it far from him. No, it was made stronger. So if parents don't understand the issue of their own selfish nature, of their own wrong thoughts, of their own wrong identity, then how can they ever help the child? The worst thing is that we don't see that we are wrong. And God must somehow show it to us. And I try to explain it to my patients and to everyone I counsel, because this is the main thing. And I see sometimes people, they don't get it, that something is wrong with them. Not because that wrong is because they want it, but they were born like this, but they must recognize it in order to expel it. And so I have a question I put to them. And I have this question to put to the parents. Would you, when your child is not doing the right thing, if God would give you a button to push, and if you push the button, you would force the child to do the right. The child would just come to obey. Or would you not push the button even though the child would get lost for eternity? So if you would push the button, you would correct the child, of course against his will because he was not asked, but you could correct him. You push the button. And so that child would not be lost. Would you push the button? And almost everyone says yes. And if you say yes, it's because you have not understood what's wrong in you. There is no coercion, there is no force in the love of God. There will be not one in heaven who has not changed and was born again. Because we must destroy that nature. And it must be done willingly. It must be done reasonably. It must be done consciously, and because we want to get rid of it by a battle. But a battle that we fight willingly. That we are willing to take everyone on us just to get rid of this wrong identity. Would you like to be your child in heaven, keeping its own wrong identity, wanting to stay like it was born? Would you like to have your parents in heaven just because they are your parents, not having changed their identity? Would you? Just because it's your parent or just because it's your child? I don't want that. If there is no willingness, if there is no understanding, if there is no reasonable way to think what's wrong, then everyone must stay in the place he has chosen to stay when the light came to his eyes. So may God help us as parents and as children, the one that we understand, to remove the wrong identity from us, to be an influence for the good, so that children might remember well the parenting time in their life, and remembering that they had parents who worked and educated them, helped them to get the foolishness out of their heart through the rod of correction, making them wise people unto God. That they should remember It was a pleasant time. There were no fights. We didn't fight for supremacy because mother and father helped removing the foolishness from the heart. That should be the right education. That should be the right parenting. Amen.